Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Imagine This Women's International Film Festival 2022 Shorts Block 1 talk back today. My name is Jess. My name is Jess. I actually had a short film screen at Imagine This last year called Drama High. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to everyone today. I was thinking maybe we can all introduce ourselves one by one and have a brief description of the film that you had in the festival this year. So I'm going to call people out so in order of what I see on my screen. So first I see is Andrea. Yeah.
Sorry. Hi. So I have a short film called Biased that is screening virtually online. And it is set in Koreatown, Los Angeles. And it's about an incompetent apartment manager who has to decide between two couples to fill a vacant apartment. And it is a lot of conversations and chaos ensues from that.
I recognize the house, I think. That's really great. So the next person I see on my screen is Derek Evans.
Hi, my name's Derek, and I have a short music video called Rochelle Bloom's Stories I Create in My Head. It is about a woman's journey to overcome the scars from childhood. So.
Very good. I remember that one too. Okay. And then the next person I see on my screen is I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Rochelle.
Yes, that's Rochelle. Nice to meet you. I'm the director of the short documentary film, The Woman in White. And the film is based on the true story of a woman and a nurse who was forcibly disappeared in El Salvador during the Civil War. And I'm based in Toronto.
Very cool. Okay. And then next person I see is Lainey.
Hi, I'm Lainey Ventura. I have a short film called Ensuite, which basically follows a couple the year after her breast cancer surgery.
And then, very, very cool. And the next one is Jeffrey.
So I apologize for the ambient noise at the Starbucks. My name's Jeffrey Cantor, New York-based director. I directed Lainey Ventura's Ensuite, which she wrote and stars in. So I will not repeat the description because that was dead accurate.
Yeah, that was yes, I remember that one. So very accurate description indeed. Next person is Masha.
Oh, yes. We are here as a team. It's me as a writer-director and my co-writer and collaborator, Maggie Bernard.
That's me, I'm Maggie.
Nice to meet you both.
And we are in the international competition, in the online competition with the film, with the comedy Hedgehog. It's semi-autobiographical short film about the young girl who hires her father as her assistant to prepare for the Fancy Boutique's grand opening.
Yes, I remember that one. And then the last person, I guess, is Zoe.
Hi everyone, my name is Zoe. I'm from China, and I'm the writer-director for The Bright Fire. It's a story about two young cousins changing friendship under the influence of their unstable families. It's a story based on my own experience.
Oh, okay. After saying that one, that's interesting. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us here today. First, one thing I will say is that every single film I saw in this block was super interesting because they all came from such a variety of different points of views and tones, and just subject matter was all over the map. And so I was wondering if anyone wants to answer this, like what was the inspiration behind your short and what drove you to make it?
Yeah, I can go. So I was actually an apartment manager for a 48 unit building. Many
So
years
lived an experience.
It was based on a personal experience. And so there were definitely a lot of personal questions that I had to ask people to, in the interviews, and who I thought would be, the best person or couple who could get the apartment. And then I had to let the owner know of what I thought, and it just put me in an uncomfortable position. And I just realized that we all have different experiences and beliefs, and you really have to try to stay neutral and not biased, but it's hard not to, because we're all human. So I always wanted to write a story about that, and so I did.
Actually, in terms of your story, it was like a follow-up question, I guess, in terms of the bias subject matter, I was actually really curious about who the final couple Bernard settles on, because I couldn't really tell, and I was like really curious about it.
Yeah, so I wrote it in that way where the viewer doesn't know, and the viewer, I would hope, inside decides for themselves, because based on their biases and views of the situation. So I did not, I kind of went back.
Ambiguous.
Yeah, it's kind of ambiguous. I went back and forth with it, but I knew I had to write it in a way where either couple, could get the apartment.
That's what I felt like. It's like it could have swung either way. Is how I felt. So mission accomplished.
Thanks, good.
Anyone else want to share like what drove what drove them to make it, or like what drove, like, for example, I was really curious about Derek's music video and like how you came up with the concept behind it and stuff like that.
So Rochelle approached me back in I think it was 2020 with the idea of helping her out with a music video. Also work as an actor. I was doing some ADR work on a film in her studio, and we got to talking, and she said, hey, I've got this album I'm going to put out. I'd like to do a sort of narrative concept for each track. And while we've only worked on the first one, we had about 8 months of pre-production on planning out an entire storyline to go with each of these songs, which are incredibly personal to her. And I think that Rochelle, God bless her, she gave me full artistic control over kind of where that storyline went. And so working with her, directly with her, and two other great people, Dennis and Greg, we were able to come up with a concept following the young girl, her mother, and this rabbit that you sort of see.
I was curious about the rabbit imagery. I was like, oh, what does this mean?
So the rabbit to me is it represents those things that we carry with us from our childhood. So the young girl has this rabbit toy, and as we progress through the story, we see this slightly scarier rabbit figure along with these horsemen. Yeah, it was sort of like the narrative itself wasn't meant to be any kind of thing that was specific per se story-wise to Rochelle's life, but the feelings that she evoked within the songs is something that I really tried to get a very solid grasp on, tried, and to sort of say, well, okay, well, what kind of thing can carry all of these together? What kind of a story could do that? And so we planned out the whole thing before we even shot the first one there. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I think it's really, I mean, that just makes me want to see like the rest of the universe of this album, if that makes sense, because it had such striking imagery in the first one. So I'm curious where it all goes. I hope we get to all see it. But I also do remember that a lot of people in your introductions kind of mentioned that they all came from very personal places. Like, what was it like for you guys to like mine those very personal stories for your art?
I can touch on that. Ensuite was actually inspired by some actual events. It's about this couple and her breast cancer, and I had been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2018, and it wasn't really meant to be a film or a story about breast cancer. It was more about a couple and just their life together, all filmed in the bathroom. You know, it was kind of like, let's show a couple in their most intimate moments in their most intimate room in their house and what happens over the course of a year. And it was kind of like, it was sort of like little, just a movie of small moments of them. And then when we handed the script over to Jeffrey, he said there was one moment that touched on her breast cancer, so that you knew it was part of what happened in their year together, but it wasn't the focus. Because I kind of, at the time, being in recovery and healing from multiple surgeries, I was not ready to put myself out there in that way. You know, I didn't want to make it, oh, there's Lainey and she has breast cancer. Like it felt a little too in your face and personal for me. So I was trying to avoid that at all costs. And then,
Understandable.
yeah. And then when Jeffrey saw the script, he said, you know, I think you really have something more to tell here. You have something really lovely in here. And I think it would be a disservice to not explore it a little bit more. And so I said, okay, you know, we can do that. And so then it really did become a film about this couple and what, it's not autobiographical. For those of you who have seen it, my husband is in the next room. You know, he was wonderful. But this particular couple went through what they went through, but the inspiration came from actual events. And there were a couple of lines in the movie and a couple of things that were true to life, which was kind of nice. Yeah, and it wasn't, you know, to answer your second question, I think, was how was it having these personal events as part of the film, I think was sort of what you were asking. Is that right? It was okay. I mean, there were moments when it was a little sad, a little hard, because some of it was a little bit true. But for me personally, I have a pretty good ability to separate stuff. So I was able to kind of do that. And then watching it back the first time on the big screen was very emotional.
I imagine.
Yeah, just because it was like I just saw so much that I hadn't seen, you know, before. So but yeah, it was definitely a labor of love. And I think when you can do a film or project that does come from a personal place, it really makes the whole experience for yourself, for your crew, for all the people who are watching it very, very different, as opposed to like the next one I'm working on, which was just came out of my head one day. You know, it had nothing to do with anything. And I know that that's going to be a different experience. This was very, very personal, and it will always sit in that space for me.
Especially because it's like oftentimes a good, like, I think when things come from such a personal place, it becomes a story that only you can tell the way that you could do it. That makes sense. That's also very important.
If I just can follow up, I mean, I also want to really give Lainey a lot of credit, because it's to write something and to hand that over to somebody else to help you tell your story, and then to also act in it. It took a great amount of nuanced skill on her part to be able to navigate that tightrope with the amount of integrity that she did. I think if you've seen the film, her work is really terrific, and as is Rob's. And like Ethan, is that? I'm sorry, Derek. Like Derek was saying, Lainey really handed over to me a huge amount of creative freedom, and trusted me, and so that the whole process was a fulfilling tightrope, if you will. And we had 2 days. We shot in a day and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. But I don't think that, you know, I thought that was terribly unusual. From what I've heard of a lot of the other people at the festival, ours was in person. That was not so unique. The actual shoot days were pretty tight, but the mood in the rooms, and among the company really was just remarkable. And everybody sort of played along, and we accomplished a tremendous amount in a very short period of time. And I think Lainey gets a huge amount of the credit for that.
I mean, I just really love like what you mentioned before, like those small moments. I thought that was like very successfully conveyed. Like it did feel like a very intimate relationship, even if that wasn't your actual husband, you know? And like I also love that that film was all shot from the same angle and their use of mirrors and stuff like that. It was very, very cool.
Thank
So-
you. Well, initially, Jeffrey was actually supposed to be my husband, and it was originally written for him.
Whoa.
And he bailed with good reason. And then we found Rob, and Rob was just spectacular. So, you know, things always do work out. But
Yeah, you guys really sold
that
it.
that was the goal, is to take this very quiet little place. And it's not easy, you know, but you think about it, like what happens in the bathroom.
And also, I have to say, so my DP was not happy with the locked off camera at all. He wanted to protect us. He wanted to shoot it more conventionally, and it was originally planned to be shot into the bathroom. And again, I apologize for the ambient noise. After the when we started reading the script, it made much more sense to make the focal point the bathroom itself, and that's really Lainey's or the wife's sort of world. And as we go further into the room, that's her and her husband. And as you hear the ambient noise from the house, that's the rest of the world. And it's not until the very end of the movie where we break through that wall. And so it served the purpose, I think, to shoot it with the locked off camera through the bathroom.
I loved it. I thought it was a really wonderful choice. Like, but also this also made me want to ask about Masha and Maggie, actually, because you're the other two duo in this call, and I'm curious how you guys work together and stuff like that.
Well, we met at the London Film School. This project was part of Masha's term 4 education at LFS. So Masha asked me she proposed this idea to me and said, help me write it. And I said, absolutely. This sounds so much fun. And I mean, Masha can talk more about, because it's a tribute to her relationship with her father.
Yeah, I was curious, like, how you were able to enter that, because obviously, if it's a father-daughter relationship, that's a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm. My job was to be as impersonal as possible. It was Masha's job to think about her emotions, her love for her dad. It was my job to say, well, that's not relevant to the script. Get that out of there. So it was a good balance of debating and sort of restructuring over and over again until we found a spot that wasn't quite the truth, but wasn't a lie, and it was right for the film.
I guess it helps to have someone to help kill your darlings, right?
Oh yes, I'm a killer. Yeah.
But like the other question I had about Hedgehog in particular was, I was really curious, and if Masha wants to share about her half of the partnership, I also want to hear that too. But like, I was curious about the decision to shoot in black and white.
It was the rule in term 4 at our school. So it was it was a school's exercise, and we had to. But yes, for this story, it was good because we could. It's so abstract, and it's also very simple. It's about the family. I think it's also something that Maggie and I, where we found these points where we could. I am from Ukraine. Maggie's from the. Are you from New York, Maggie?
I'm from Connecticut.
Connecticut. So what I wanted to say. We decided to turn it into the comedy, because sometimes I think it's easier to speak about difficult things or about drama through the comedy, just because you as an author behind this, as a director, you create some distance to the subject. You don't over dramatize things, so suddenly it all becomes super absurd, and I really like to work with this absurdity, and
I love that tone that you guys struck,
because it's, on the one hand, it's super serious, and then suddenly you see I know it's also with the choice of the shots, when you look at on the wide shots, it's all absurd and comedy, but if you look in a closer shot, you suddenly see the person is really struggling between these two worlds, and how is it to adapt the father in the new society, new country, language barrier. Then you have your own you are still a daughter and he's a father, he knows, right? So there was just a lot of comedic and dramatic moments we could really explore together. And yes, so this is the result.
Well, it was really, I enjoyed it. Even though I'm not Ukrainian, I felt connected to like that father-daughter relationship and like that clash of like culture clash and generations. But anyway, for the last two, because Zoe and Rochelle haven't really spoken yet, both of you guys had films that were very difficult in different ways. That makes sense. What was the most difficult part about shooting your shorts? If that makes sense. Because you guys had very intense subject matters, both of you.
Sure, I'll start. So I'm actually a first-time director. I'm a dance theater artist, and the film sort of came out during the pandemic lockdowns where a lot of dance performing artists were doing live streaming, and I wasn't quite as inspired to do that. And one of my dance artists had a very strong family story that I was familiar with, and I just wanted to share the story of her family's journey to seek justice for her disappeared grandmother. And so that was sort of the inspiration behind it. And, it was really, the most difficult part was the scope of the story, which is really sort of, there's so many parts of it. All of it is very important, and trying to condense several hours into 19 minutes was really the most difficult task, choosing which parts of the story to share and being able to do justice to the full scope of her experience. So that was the most challenging. We also sort of shot it in one day, and it was a very intuitive process because I don't come from the film background. So I sort of, started to look at it as a choreography and storytelling.
I could tell. When you said you were from dance, I was like, this makes sense now.
So that was sort of my approach to the work. And we didn't storyboard it. And the focus was really on creating a really safe space for the subject to share her story. And it was really about the intimacy of her experience. And that sort of was the driving force behind it.
Yeah, because that's also something I had a question about was obviously this, the subject matter of your documentary touches so many people. And I was curious why it was only focusing on one person and their story. But I guess this makes sense. You have like a personal connection.
Yeah, I mean, she's really, she represents thousands and thousands of people with similar lived experience. But we really wanted to focus on the intimacy of her journey because a lot of times it's about the stories around the events of the disappeared people, and we don't hear as much about how that impacts the families left behind, and that sort of was what I wanted to focus on.
And also, like, I didn't really enjoy your strong use of imagery in the B-roll for your documentary and stuff. So kudos on all that.
Thank you.
But finally, Zoe, I want to make sure you have enough time to talk about your film as well.
Yeah, my film was actually a story between me and my cousin. And the motivation of me shooting this film is really trying to find my relationship with him again, because we were very good friends when we were really, really young. But now, like, we don't even know how to talk to each other anymore because we have very different families, and it affects our characteristic a lot. And a lot of things happened when we were young, and the very sad thing happened is actually he has a very, very irresponsible father, and one day he actually caused a domestic fire, and my cousin was totally disfigured. So that was the original true story, and I wasn't able to shoot it because I'm afraid of hurting anybody's feelings. So I choose this version of the story. So the most difficult part for me making this film is actually to find out which version I should decide to shoot in the end.
Yeah, I mean, the version that came out, I felt like was a comment upon like an ongoing cycle of trauma and violence, because it seems to start from the parents, right? And then it kind of continues on to the child characters as well. I was wondering if you have any personal thoughts about how you feel people can walk out from such a cycle, like how can they escape this thing? Because that's such an intense topic.
Yeah, some people just like the boy's mother in the film, like she just stay in that house forever. Like she never even thought about leaving the house. I think that's happening to a lot of
Domestic violence couples.
like lower income families. So, I think that's a topic worth talking about.
Yeah. I know we have to wrap up soon because we're getting close to the end of half an hour, but is there anything anyone else wants to say about their film? I'm also very curious. Last question, if anyone wants to share like what plans they have next for their films really quickly, that'd be great. Or if no one else has anything to say.
I'll say something. So when I originally wrote this, or while I was writing it, I thought it would be really interesting to do a series of shorts. And so each short would be based on each character in this story. So almost like what is happening to them before this whole big scene of a short happens, and what happens after. So that is something that I have on my plate that I'd like to develop.
That'd be really cool as a web series, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. Thank
Any
you.
other future plans for people? If no one else wants to share.
I just want to say thank you to the festival itself. I mean, they got together. I mean, we sat through, Lainey and I sat through quite a number of films, including the first feature, the Justice of Bunny. I forgot her last name. And I thought the films were just tremendous. The range, as you had said, represented just in this group, but also a very impressive group of films. And so I just want to thank the Imagine This Film Festival for including us.
Oh, yay. I mean, I myself have felt that this was a wonderful opportunity to see everyone's films. And every time I see festival programming like this, I always feel much more inspired to make the next thing, right? So I hope if you guys get a chance, please check out each other's films. I had a wonderful time watching everything. So I think you guys should try to. If we're all good, then like, I guess this will wrap up the Shorts Program 1 Talk Back. Thank you so much for joining us at the Imagine This Women's International Film Festival. And I think in about half an hour, there'll be Talk Back number 2. So
Thank you so much.
yeah,
Really lovely.
thank you so much for coming today.
Bye, everybody.
Yay. I hope everyone.